Thanks for joining me. So today I was going to do a painting using these colors for the KS Resin March Challenge, but I started looking around and I have all of these paintings that are done. So I've got that one, 8 coasters back there. I've got another 4 coasters under this one. My mom has 8 coasters. I have 2 more coasters here and 9 coasters there. And those paintings. My sister has some paintings. And my niece and great nephew have a painting. All of these. And all of these. And this one under here. And that box is clear full also. And there's a painting there. Aside from those 4 coasters and these 4 coasters, none of the rest of this has been resined. So I have decided that I am going to get some of this stuff resined because we're really running out of room. As you can see, the tables are pretty full. There's a little bit of space there, but most of it's full, and that's where I usually paint, right there. And when you resin, using the KS resin that I do, it's the liquid art epoxy. It takes 12 hours to be dry to the touch, and it takes 3 days for it to be fully cured. So I thought I better get some of this stuff resined so that it has a chance to cure fully, and then I can move it other places. So that is what I'm going to do today. So I'm gonna get set up and I'll be right back. All right, I am back. I am going to try to make sure that I talk loud enough so that you can hear me, because I have 2 space heaters that are running and I know that it makes noise in the background, and I'm sorry about that, but I didn't feel like it would be a good idea for me to shut them off because I have to have both vents shut for down here because they are up near the ceiling, and if I have them open while I'm resining, it will get little dust and stuff on the tiles, and then it messes up the resin. And so it's more important to have those closed than to make it so that the space heaters could be shut off. Okay, so there are several things that you need to make sure that you have when you're going to resin. Obviously you need the resin, but you need something to mix it up in. I have a silicone cup. I really like it. It is a 1 cup, and so it shows the ounces and how much is in there. And the kind of resin that I have is KS resin. It is the liquid art epoxy, and so I've got a gallon of the hardener and a gallon of the resin, and this is a 1-to-1 ratio for this brand. That's one of the reasons I like it. So what I do is I put the resin in to the 1/2 cup mark first, and then I'll add the hardener to it until I get to the 1 cup. And so that way I don't have to use multiple cups and dirty items or end up having stuff that I have to throw away. When I store this, I made sure that I had it upside down because you don't want any dust or anything like that to get in your cup. You also want gloves, because as you are using the resin, you will get some on your hands no matter how careful you are, and you don't want to get resin on your hands. I also used a level and made sure that the tiles are level over here, but I also made sure that they are level on the cups that they're going to be moved to. So last time I mixed up this much, I had enough that I did 22 coasters, and I still had some left over. So I actually have 27, I think, coasters that are prepared and have places for them to go as they are drying, just because I want to make sure that I have enough prepared, because if I don't have enough, then I will waste a bunch of resin, and I don't want to do that. One of the other things that I would have done is mixed up resin and done it on one of my larger canvases first, and then done the coasters. But I've got so much of everything that I need to do, and I figured if I do the coasters, it's going to be easier to get them out of the way once they have cured. The nice thing about this kind of resin is within 12 hours it will be dry to the touch. Within 3 days it is fully cured. So after the 3 days I can put things away and wrap them up, so I won't have to worry about them getting messed up. Something else I use is baby wipes. It works really good to have those to clean up the messes. One thing you do need to make sure about baby wipes is that they do kind of leave fibers behind, and so you want to make sure that if you wipe off your gloves or whatever, that you get all of the fibers off of there before you touch the resin, or you will end up getting some of those in your resin. But paper towels do the same thing. I find the baby wipes actually leave a little bit bigger of fibers, and so it's easier to find those than when you're using paper towels. I do still use paper towels, just not as much since I have the baby wipes. And then you also need something to stir up your resin with. So I have these silicone sticks. They have metal or something inside them, so they are firm, but they're also flexible. So those come in really handy. You want to have tweezers or something else to pick out anything that might get in the resin. And then a torch. Some people use a heat gun. I just use my torch because you want to be able to heat up the resin and help release any bubbles that are in there. And then the last thing that I use is I have a timer on my old phone. So I have that set for 4 minutes, because when I add the hardener to the resin, then I have to mix it for 4 minutes. And something else I do is I make sure that I put my hair up in a ponytail so that I don't have a bunch of loose hairs flying all over. But I do find that I still get them on my shirt and stuff, so I try to clean it off as good as possible. It might work if I had a little lint roller or something to be able to help get more of that off. Alright, so I'm going to try to move my phone to one side or the other just so that it's easier for you to see what I'm doing. So it's going to be a little bit rough. Okay. So before I was adding the hardener and then I was adding the resin, because I think I had another one at one point that said to do it that way. But on KS resin, if you get on the part that shows you the specific resin you're wanting to order, it has a thing down in the bottom that you can click, and it has the instructions on how to use theirs. And theirs says to pour in the resin first and then give it just a little bit to settle before you add the hardener. And I think by doing that, it also helps it to not have so many bubbles, because it gives it a chance for the bubbles to come up. So I'm going to add this till I get to the half cup. 1/4. Now you do have 45 minutes to work with this, so it seems like a long time, but by the time I get to the end of the coasters, it's starting to get tacky. So you got to work pretty fast if you're going to do this much. And I realize I could mix up 8 ounces instead of 16 ounces, and then I'd have, I wouldn't have to rush so much. But then I have to mix up more, and it takes 4 minutes to mix it, and so I would just as soon mix up as much as I can and still be able to get it worked. So once I do that, I end up with a little bit of resin on my gloves, and so I wipe that off just because I don't want to contaminate the hardener at all, because if you get them mixed together on the bottle, then you could have problems with the rest of your resin. Something else about this resin is that the bottle with the resin has a white cap on it, and the bottle with the hardener, it has a black cap on it. So when I take the cap off of one, I have only taken that cap off. I leave the other cap on the other one until I'm ready to use it, and by that time I have the other cap put back on. That way you don't get the caps mixed up by accident and put the wrong one on there. So I just let this sit for a little bit, because as you can see there's bubbles in it, which there's going to be, but they start going away when you start rubbing it on and then you torch it. That'll get rid of most of them, and then this is made that it just continues to pop the bubbles. They continue to come up to the surface and they'll pop. One of the things that you can do is use rubbing alcohol and spritz over your tiles or your canvas or your molds once the resin's on it, because that will also help bring the bubbles up to the surface so that they can pop sooner. I have noticed when I've done that there seemed to be kind of a little film on top of them, and I'm not sure. I think probably you can clean that off after it's all dry, but I found that usually I don't have a problem with bubbles once I use this. Alright, so that's sat a few minutes, so I'm going to go ahead and add the hardener now. Now the hardener is not as thick as the resin, so it does pour out faster. So you want to keep that in mind as you're pouring it. Okay, now I'm just going to get these out of the way real quick. And now I'm going to start my timer and stir this. Now you don't want to stir it aggressively or you'll just work a lot more bubbles into it, but you do want to make sure that you scrape the edges, and you want to get along the bottom of the container also. And then every once in a while you want to make sure that you also scrape off the stick. And scrape off the edges of it too, not just the top and the bottom. And then scrape that back so that you can get it back into the cup also. Now just doing this has made a lot of the bubbles go away. You want to make sure that you're mixing this until it is clear. You don't want to have any of those ribbons in it. I don't know if you can see them or not. But as long as you can see trace ribbons in there, you need to continue to stir it. I had some paintings that I was resining and I had problems with all of them, and I was getting so frustrated because I kept having bubbles that were showing up, and I would torch them and then they would show up again, and I would try to take my tweezers and pull stuff out, and I was having so many issues, and I thought maybe I had gotten some bad resin, and I was really frustrated. And so I got on the KS Resin Facebook group. They're very helpful in there, and asked what was going on, and I had several people give me lots of advice, but I had somebody that said it's common dust. You have a lot of dust that's in there. And so after I was told that, I went back to my art studio and looked, and that's when I realized that I had vents in the ceiling. And so then I had to start making sure that I heated up my room enough that I could turn off the heat while I was doing the resin on my canvases. But if you have bubbles that are like in a line or whatever, usually it's because you have a hair or something like that in it. So oh, and something else you want to make sure that you do. Okay, timer's done. Let's shut that off real quick. Well, I still have clean fingers. You want to make sure that your temperature is between 70 and 80 degrees, because that's the best temperature for your resin to work and for it to cure properly. So that's the reason that I have the space heaters going right now. They don't stir up the dust like the furnace does either. But once I get them covered with the resin, then I will put them in place where they're going to be, and I will cover them with these picnic table tents that I have. I always try to use one hand to spread the resin around so that I have the other hand clean. Sometimes it'll get a little bit of resin on it, but not too much, and then I just wipe it off with a baby wipe. So I just put a little bit on each one and then start rubbing it around. And like I said, since I have so many that I'm doing at once, I'm gonna do it fairly quickly. And I keep one of the corners free so that I can hang on to it. And I'll spread it on the top as much as I can, and then I start going down the sides. You want to make sure you get the sides really well. Now I'm going to need just a little bit more resin, so I'm going to stick my finger in the resin and just get a little bit more on it. So then I have enough to do the sides too. And then once I get to that corner, I just take and let go of it and do this part really gently. And then I'll take my fingers and go along that corner good too. And then I always try to make sure that I do the very top of the edge where the top and the edge actually come together, because otherwise sometimes it comes off of there and then you got issues. Most of the time I try to do the tiles that are further away from me first. This time I started in the front for some reason, I don't know why. I really like these gloves. The first ones that I had gotten were really loose, and so when I would try to use the resin's kind of sticky, and so the gloves would just kind of move around all over my hand because they were so loose. So these are really nice. They fit like a glove, haha. Just a little bit more. And if at some point you get more resin on it than what you need, you can always just hold it over the top of one of your other ones and let it drip off onto one of your other tiles or canvases that you're going to be resining. And the other thing is, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to put my phone back. There, that's better, huh? And something else, as you're working on these, if you want, you can pick them up so that they're closer to you, and you know, that way you can turn them around a little bit and see what you're doing. So you don't have to just leave them laying. Since I am moving these to different places, I didn't mark the cups, but when I do the coasters and even my paintings, and I'm not going to put them someplace else, then I try to have the coasters, well, the cups, as close as I can, and so then I put marks on the table so that I know where that's supposed to sit, so that I know that it's level. But alright, they're looking so pretty. Now, I don't know if you can see the difference between where the resin's actually sitting and where the other is, but you can see how much it makes the colors just really pop back out again. That's one of the things I really, really love about resin. In fact, I've had some paintings that I've painted, and I really, really liked them. I thought they were so beautiful. And then they dried, and some of them I hadn't done anything with for, I don't know, probably a few months. And so when I went to resin them, I thought, why did I think this was a pretty painting? And then I started putting resin on them, And then it brought the colors back to life. I'm like, oh yeah, that's why I liked this painting. But when they dried, they just looked so dull. Some of the paints don't look dull, even when it's dry, because they just have so much metallic in them or glitter or whatever that they just have so much shimmer or sparkle to them that you can even see it when it's dry. But some of them, they just don't look like much when they're just plain dry. Right. I probably could make that be enough, but I just want to make sure that I don't skimp on the last part of it. Thought for a second there I was gonna drop that one on the table. Okay, so now I clean my hands off because I'm gonna torch, and I don't want my torch getting all resined. Oh dear. So you don't want to go over this and let it set in one spot for very long. I have found sometimes if I bounce it up and down like that, it does a better job of popping some bubbles. I don't know why that is, but it seems to be more effective. Alright, and then you'll look and see if there's anything else still in there. And you take those out. And you also need a really bright light, because if you don't have one, you can look and see and it looks like it's all nice and clear, but then later on you'll find out that you missed stuff. And sometimes it's just that more bubbles are coming to the surface. But you can usually tell the difference. And then after you've looked across the top like that, you want to get down and look so you're kind of looking over the surface of it more, because then you can usually see things better that you couldn't see before. And you want to look for dry spots. All right, those look good. So now I'm going to move this. And I'm going to move these out of the way. I set certain ones in certain places so I know which ones go on which cup. Just because I know that that's the one that I have it leveled for. Oops, sorry. And then when you're moving one tile to the other spots, you don't want to put them, you don't want to go across the top of others, because if there's anything on the bottom of it, you don't want it getting on any of your others. You don't want it falling off of it. All right, I'm gonna cover those up again. And I would probably do all right to not cover them between putting those over there and doing these, but I would just as soon have it covered and know that I don't have to worry about it. Okay, a little bit more. So see, now I've done 4 and I have resin on the other 4, and it's still down to a little more than 3/4 of a cup. So that shows you how much you can do with one 16-ounce thing. So this one I actually have more resin on it than I put on the other ones. So see, I can kind of scoop some of that off and then go along that edge again, because you want to make sure that you don't have big drips. So you want to make sure you scrape those just like you do with your paints. And I will go back and do that to the ones that I had set over there. Sometimes I will take the paint that drips off of the painting and drips onto the mat, and I'll scoop it up into a cup so that I'm reclaiming it and I can use it on a different painting. But I will not do that with resin. So if I have some resin that falls, I won't pick it back up and use it on top of these coasters even, because you don't want to have any kind of little fluffy things or anything like that that might be on the mat to get into this. Look at how much of a difference that makes on this. Oh, and something else that you want to make sure that you do is wipe off your canvas or your tiles, because if they've been sitting at all, they're going to have dust on them. A lot of times after I paint mine, I put them under those tents and I just leave them there until I am going to resin them. Sometimes they're too big, they take up too much space, and so some of them I don't have under there, but I try to keep as much as I can under. Don't drip. There are some guides out there that also tell you how much resin you need for different sizes of canvases. If I find the link, I'll put that in my description. It does come in very handy. Now I got resin on there, so I'm going to touch this side instead with this glove because I don't want to get resin on the glove if I don't have to. This one is going to have more resin than is needed. Now I know you don't want to watch me in slow motion, I'm sure, doing all of these, and so so I'm gonna fast forward through most all of this. You can watch them if you want, but at least you don't have to watch it at regular speed. But that way, instead of just shutting it off, if you want to, you can see how it changes them. So I don't know if you can tell or not, but it's getting close to the end of its working time, and it's getting really sticky and harder to push around. So that's how you know when you're getting close to being done with being able to work with it. And I still have quite a bit left in my cup. Alright, since I don't have much time left, I'm going to do this, because it'll take up more of it. Still not all of it, but it's a lot faster to do one of these than it is to do a bunch of coasters. And I already had this leveled where it was sitting anyway, so I know that I can easily level it again. And I'm in such a hurry that I did not leave me a corner to hold on to. I knew I had enough to do a 10 by 20, so if I had one of those leveled out, I was going to grab one of those, but then I thought, well, I don't have it laying where it would be level, and so I decided I would just grab this one. You want to make sure you get the corners really, really good because of the folds that they have on them. So sometimes it's hard to get those, and you'll think that you have them, and then you realize that you didn't have them as good as you thought you did. So oh, I don't even have that side. You'll know if you have it good or not because as you're dragging your fingers across it, if the canvas is bare, your fingers will just kind of stick there a little bit. Otherwise, they glide across it. Okay. Now I'm so messy. So the last tiles I did, I didn't worry too much about scraping the edges because I can get the drips when I take the tape off. But this, I want it to be a little bit better. It's getting so gummy. Oh. Alright, looks good. See, it's even pouring out a lot slower than it was. Now, hopefully I have enough time to do this one. Alright, there's that one. Here's this one. I think I've got enough to do this one, last one. And hopefully enough time to do it. Problem is when it gets too close to the end of its working time, then it's hard to get it all smoothed out good, and it won't self-level as well because it's too thick, because it runs too slow. So normally I have enough time that I'd be able to do all of these because I have done it, but I wasn't thinking about how much longer it takes when you are shooting a video. So see how nice and sparkly that is now? Just really, really brings out the colors. I just love it so much. And that is why I like working with resin. And the thicker the resin is, the harder it is to get the bubbles popped. So, I mean, there's that too. Alright, I think that one looks good. Alright, There's just a little tiny bit of resin left in this. I'm actually going to scoop it into a mold that unfortunately you can't see except for a little tiny corner of it because I was trying to put it where there wasn't resin laying on the mat. I might be able to fill one of these up, maybe if I'm lucky. But it's a good way to not waste any of your resin. Okay. Well. I'm not worried about saving these gloves because I don't use them for anything after I resin anyway. I mean, I could wear them for like messing with paint and stuff, but I'm definitely not going to use them again to resin because if there's a little bit of residue on it, if you get into my resin and mess it up. Alright, well, it's not fully filled, but it's mostly filled and it'll work because it will level itself out. Okay. So this, I usually just let it dry, or else I can wipe it out with paper towels and then go over it with a baby wipe. This I'll get under one of the tents so that it doesn't get anything in it. And it can dry. Likewise, I'll do that with the, let's see if I can bring it down. With the one that's filled, I'll get it under a tent too. So I'm going to go ahead and take my gloves off and clean up my mess. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope that this was helpful to you and educational. If so, please click the like button. That helps my channel to spread to other viewers. If you haven't subscribed, I would really appreciate it if you would become one of my newest subscribers. And thank you to all of you who are my current subscribers. Thank you so much for all of your support. I hope this was helpful for you. I'll catch you later. Bye, and God bless.